score in this line. I have tremendous score in this position for white, and there are various continuations. So let's study them one by one through games. But before we get there, how should somebody study this line? Let me repeat, if he is a professional player, and how should he study this line if he is at this position, if he is an amateur player? Because this is a position that does have some theory. It is very important to note the possible moves by black. Here they are. Black can play c6 in this position, knight bd7, a6. He can play c6 here, c6, knight bd7, a6, knight c6, bishop b4 check, c5. All these moves are playable. What you need to do is remember which are the moves by black and the first move by white in each case. Try to categorize them in your mind like that. For example, after bishop d7, I play knight bd2. After bishop b4 check, I play bishop d2. After c5, I play castle. After c6, I play knight e5. Each time, different variations, some different move by white. Sometimes it can be the same move. Against a6, we castle. Against c6, for example, we castle. Or bishop d7, we castle. So you need to categorize that in your mind. Now, if you're a professional or want to be a very serious professional player, yes, and improve, first of all, here I offer some very nice ideas. There are several ways for white to handle each one of these 7 or 8 variations that are available for black here, several ways. And if you are a professional player, what should you do? You should rotate. With white, after, for example, bishop b4 check, knight bd2 is playable. Let's say here this check. Here I have the move bishop d2, but you can also play knight c3 and knight bd2. So what you should do is rotate, not play every time the same line. In the past, several years ago, before the era of very strong computers, we could repeat the same line again and again, even for 10 games. Not really being afraid of our opponent's preparation. But here, you cannot do that against a player with a rating of 3,500. Sooner or later, black will find good ways. If you keep on playing the same thing, he will study them for hours with details, and he will find good ways to get fine play. So you should rotate. If you are an amateur player, you don't really need that. You need to understand the more important principles and a little bit of through games. This will save us a lot of time because we study theory and games together. Of course, the time of memorization will come for you at home. So we are here and we are studying a game between two very good players. Bishop g2 or knight f3 doesn't really matter. So dc4, knight f3. One of the moves that is being played here, and a very popular one, is knight c6. Black is possibly intending on the next move, if we castle, to play a6. Now take a note in your mind. It's a different story to play a6, castle, and knight c6. Keep that in mind. And a different story, different variation to play knight c6 here. What we are investigating is various fifth moves by black. Yes, move number 5, knight c6, a6, bishop b4 check, etc., etc. So knight c6 and possibly later a6 is a different story than a6 first and then knight c6. So here, the white can even play short castle, but the most popular move is queen a4, and this is the move that I suggest, and this was played in the game. Black here played bishop b4 check because this is by far the best move. We know already that, for example, after such a position, you will see now explanation of the variations will come easier now. Why? Because we know the principles. For example, we are already kind of out of book and white is better. Why? Because black doesn't have a pawn break. If he wants to achieve a pawn break, he needs to play here and c5. But now there is another problem. He has a misplaced knight on a5. So here we can possibly take it, possibly play knight e5, or maybe such a move, because look, black will play bishop c6. No, in fact, he cannot do that with a knight on a5. Yes, if he had his knight somewhere else, then we would prevent bishop c6. So let's go back once again. We are explaining the variation with knight c6, and queen a4 is the best move. So bishop b4 check is the main line here, because other moves are bad. I do mention in the notes some other moves as well. So bishop b4 check, bishop d2, and now they play knight d5. This is theory. You need to know as far. For example, if he takes, this is already a mistake. Knight takes on d2. Let's say he plays this move. Queen takes c4, castles, castles. White is better. Once again, if they ask why white is better, because there is no pawn break for black. Black plays here. Let's find a couple of good moves for white here. Who will suggest one or maybe two good moves for white here? We are out of book already, because in the Catalan, it is very important. Understanding is very important, not just playing moves. So knight b3 might be an interesting move. We need to investigate and possibly prevent this move. So far, I like very much this move. I very much like to hit upon bad tempi by black, like knight d5, but the knight is not standing well on d5. So here, I suggest this move. Let's suppose he plays here. Now we can find the move for sure. What is the best move for here? If there was any theory, what will white play here? We can easily see, if we stop his only potential pawn break with e5, that's it. He will be moving only with pieces until the rest of the game. Here it comes, knight c4. We already know that this is, in fact, not a great deal. What to play here? We will think, we will calculate. Maybe here, maybe queen c2. Yes, because we are definitely not afraid of such ghosts. And black is forced to defend. Here I play a3, too late. I put my pieces in the center, and I'm happy that I followed this lecture, because my opponent can hardly move. Very good. So after queen a4, bishop b4 check, bishop d2, this is the best move. And now, as I mentioned in the notes, white can take on b4, and there is lots of theory here, but I would like to avoid that. I would like to have clever suggestions. So I suggest this move, queen b5, which has been played several times, of course, as well, queen b5. So this is an easy, kind of easy variation to remember. Of course, you need to spend some time, but this is an easy variation to remember. We are threatening to win this c4 back, so c4 pawn back, and he will be left without play. So black needs to take here, knight takes, and this is definitely not a moment for black to be shy. What do you think is the theory here for black? He is worse without a fight? Absolutely not. He is forced to play this move. If you have the black pieces, you need to play this move. The move is, of course, c3. Otherwise, we regain the pawn and we are better. And thank you very much. So c3, b takes c3, knight takes c3. And here, white has three possible moves. Queen d3 is playable, queen b2 is playable, and queen b3 playable. If you ask the computer what is the evaluation here, very soon it will say 0, 0, 0. But this really doesn't mean anything. Many grandmasters play this line as white with wonderful results. Here, white can play rook a to c1. I don't like to place my rook on the b line. I wouldn't like to place my rook here. The question is constantly showing 0, 0, 0, because it plays the best moves for both sides. I came to the conclusion a long time ago that I don't want to put my rooks on b1 and on c1, because here I don't like this b6 and I don't like a rook here. So I prefer to put them on c1 and d1. So in fact, this is the correct move as played by young superstar Stavroula Tsolakidou. Queen e7 was played and rook f to d1. White has very good, the computer says 0, 0, 0 here, and e4. So knight b6 was played and knight here. Generally speaking, a very good idea to remember is that in such positions, it is very good if we can, if our opponent allows us, to put a knight on e3 here. A knight fits perfectly on e3. Why? Because practice and my experience has shown that it fits perfectly well here. So black is a pawn up, what we have wonderful compensation. For example, if he goes here, we go back to b1, protecting both e4 and a2, and black is really struggling here with his bad development. What is happening in the end? Black has very difficult play, very difficult moves to make. So after a couple of moves, we are alone. White and black, our opponent. So no computers, no nothing. So here, what is left is who has the easier, he will win. He has chances to win. Let's see what happened here. However, queen b5, take, c3, takes, queen b3, queen b2, queen b3, and queen d3. So here, castles, rook a to c1, rook f to d1, and for white, somebody yes, black doesn't have pawn breaks, but he's still a pawn. If he plays here, we will play d5. We may even consider sacrificing a knight takes c5, but maybe it's too much. We will play d5. So black doesn't have pawn breaks. Somebody may argue, yes, but I like the previous positions better. He didn't have pawn breaks and we had equal pawns. Yes, in the previous positions, he was always losing. We cannot demand to win on theory. Yes. So knight b3, white has good compensation. Rook b8 was played. What is the theory here? We passed theory long ago. So queen b1 and bishop d7, good compensation for white. Knight d2, interesting idea. Is it the best move? Nobody knows. Knight f1 and knight e3, because what one does know is that a knight fits perfectly on e3 in this position. How does she know that? Generally, she has studied such positions. And queen b2 with good compensation in the end, white managed to win. Let's check another game now. Let's check the game, this one, between Nebolsio Paloma. I'm sure I don't pronounce the names correctly. So let's check. Knight f3, e6, g3. Yes, here there are other possibilities. Black has such ideas. So if you want to safely reach a Catalan, you better use the official move order. So knight c6, queen a4. Bishop b4 check is the most natural move. Bishop d2, knight d5, strange moves, but they are the best. So castles, black castles, and now black gives back the pawn without a real fight. Why? Because black thought, I don't know theory, better to avoid bishop takes d2 and c3. But this is exactly the wrong way of thinking. So queen takes c4, and now white has a stable advantage. Black takes here, knight d2, and knight b6. Queen c3 is the best move. Queen c3, I really like this move, queen c3, because all these knight d5 and knight a4 moves are dislocating the knight. So rook e8 was played and castles. For a second, let's comment on this move, long castle. This is a non-standard move. It has to be generally a bad move. And remember this principle. If we can have a good position in a safe way without any risk, by castling short, we should avoid castling long. This is in fact a very bad move in my view, but many players might be tempted to play it. Here you give to black compensation that and counter chances that he does not deserve. So the correct move is just castle, and the spirit of the Catalan is to play as easy as possible, as a quiet game as possible. Here, queen b3 is the best move, because now e5 is not so easy. Even if it is played, it doesn't solve all the problems. It's possibly even blundering, and white is better. e5 was played after all. but this is very bad. For example, here, look, I like to toy with such knights. Another tempo, as amateur players would say, tempo here, tempo there. I put the queen, for example, on d1, and now the knights were better off on d8 and on f6, for example. Yes, white has a huge advantage, c4, and we have already studied. Let's check very fast what happened. Here, and e5. I don't believe this is working. D takes e5. A simple way to play is also this, but d takes e5 is better. This and d5. This is not a typical Catalan, but this is still an advantage for white. So after calculation, white took, and here white is in fact winning because she noticed that this move is not possible. And if black goes rook e8, then rook a to d1, such a natural position, and e4 is coming and wins. So here queen d3 with a double attack and a fast win. Save, yes, okay. So another game we check very fast here because this is an important line. So queen a4 here with the white pieces is a player called Kandor with a rating of 24.03. And this game was played in 2015, boys under. So knight takes b2, c3, the correct reaction this time, take, and queen b2. Knight a4 or knight, let's suppose he goes here, not much to memorize. We castle. I prefer not to put the rook on the b line, but on the c line and in the center, and then difficult already. For example, here, who will help us? A good way to die. Who will help us here? What is happening, please? Rook takes c6. Nevertheless, rook b8 can be played by a careless player. So here, and now we decide, maybe knight b3, maybe rook f to d1, for example, queen e7. Now this is, I will examine this move. I may even examine this move, knight to e4, or just here with nice typical Catalan compensation and difficult position for black. Very good. Let's see very fast what happened. So here, knight, and you see moves. There are rook f to c1. In my mind, this is not the best move. I would have put the other rook on c1. However, this is what happened. e3, yes, stabilizing. a3 is interesting. I don't know. And already white has very good compensation. Here, e4, and in the end, white managed to win. This position, in my view, in this position, white has very good compensation. So this is how we will play in the knight c6. Learn with this with queen b5, pawn down. Let's check now another line and another game. Let's check this game between Saracinderim and Blagojevic. White has almost 2,500 and black has 2,501. This was played in 2022. Let's check here, take, and another continuation, not knight c6 this time, but a6, very popular move, a6. White can castle short, which is what happened in this game, and this is the move that I suggest, but you may study also this move individually, which is very interesting as well, knight e5. One thing is for sure here, black will do something active. He will not just allow white to regain the pawn on c4 and come and play chess, because he will be much worse. For example, here I castle, knight c3 maybe, here, finally knight takes c4, and here we are. Black can hardly move. Yes, and he goes c5, and all of a sudden, by a magical way, a familiar position arrives. And white is better with dc5 or bishop f4 here. So in the game after a6, short castle was played and knight c6. Who can tell me what is the move after b5, please? Who can tell us? Definitely the move, beyond any doubt, is of course knight e5, making the move bishop b7 an adventure. Now he will go here. I play this. Yes, he will play bishop b7. You will see all this in the notes, but this is an adventure. Now I start attacking, you know, and I managed to make it an adventure here, and d5, according to theory. This has already been played several times with very bad results for black. So after a6, castles, and knight c6. This is a very important system with tons of theory here. Very, very important. Not knight c6, a6 and knight c6. So here there are many moves played by white. The most popular move is this, with tons of theory, literally tons of theory. And I do not suggest this move because it is impractical. I have played another very interesting move against Nakamura. This move I played, which is also totally playable. And here, if you can believe, he thought for about 40 minutes. But later he played very well, and the game was a fast draw, although I did have a nice advantage at one position, but it was very difficult to calculate it, and I hesitated. So Queen c2 is another playable move, also played later by Nepomniachtchi and many other super grandmasters. Queen c2, you can guess what black will not play. He will not play simple moves like this one and give the pawn back. He needs to take on d4. And then white has compensation. So here I suggest this move. This move has little bit of theory. Our plan is to play e3 and ideas like knight bd2 and either gain the pawn back and reach a position without pawn breaks for black, or if he plays the best moves, then strive for a small advantage in some endgame. So here bishop e7 and e3 was played. So black here played h6, which is already a mistake, but black has a rating of 25-01. So the best move is possibly short castle. Black played h6, takes on f6, and knight bd2. And now black castled. Well, it's difficult to suggest another move because if he plays b5, now he's losing immediately after knight e5, knight takes e5, and d takes e5. Very nice move with a lot of extra material. So he cannot play that. And he can play this, keeping the extra pawn, but this, it seems to be very, very risky. Possibly a move like rook c1, maybe even queen a4 check, indeed, and we regain the pawn. This is forced. We regain the pawn, and here we are. This is, there is no b5, queen takes a5. So take, queen here. Of course, I won't take the queen on d5. I will play anything else, just queen c2, for example. So he castles, and what is this position? A huge advantage for white. For example, rook f to d1, rook a to c1, and we enjoy the pleasures of the Catalan. Let's say queen c3. Here he is not even threatening e5 because the rook will appear on d8. And if he really starts threatening, I may consider knight e5 myself, with a huge advantage for white. So black needs to know very well what he is doing. Here he played short castle and knight takes c4. White is better, clearly better, because of no pawn breaks. Here, now what white needs to do is to strengthen his position. Yes, this is a very nice consolidating move, strengthen his position. We don't play e4, it's very early to play such a move. First, we develop our pieces, we strengthen our position, and much later we may play e3 to e4. So here queen e7 was played. We need to calculate whether our opponent is indeed threatening e5 or not. Queen b3, I also seem to like, without calculation, this move, intending to play b5, and black is not yet threatening to play e5. So white has a huge advantage. Here, rook f to d1, I like this simple kind of play. Knight d2 intending knight e4, another nice idea. Here, white has a big advantage. Later, at some moment, he lost it, and in the end, nevertheless, he managed to win. So here, let's check another game. Just a second. Let's check this one. So with the black pieces is a famous grandmaster, Alexei Alexandrov, and this endgame was played in this position. This game was played in Chennai Olympiad. I don't know which player has the white pieces because for some reason I erased the name by mistake, but we don't care so much about names, but about moves. So takes, bishop g2, and we are studying the a6, knight c6 position. We cannot guarantee a forced advantage for white. There is no such thing in any line. Theoretically, in every game, you should come up with a good novelty, theoretically. Yes, practically, this is not possible for most players. And we just go to play a nice game and with natural moves. So here, queen c2 is playable, e3 is the main line. I also include this move in the notes. Here, this is also playable. We forget about the pawn, but with knight c3, when you see a knight on c3 in the Catalan, usually we cannot take the pawn on c4 back, but we intend to sacrifice it and play e4. This is also playable. So here, I suggest this move, bishop here, bishop g5 and e3. The best move for black is to castle short, and after some very precise moves, he can reach a more or less equal endgame, but in fact, it is more pleasant for white. So knight d5 was played this time. Bishop takes, knight c takes, and queen e2. I very much like this move, queen e2, because black will either have to give the pawn back, and we know very well what will happen then, or he will need to play b5. In case of knight b6, for example, we will play here. Let's say he castles and take on c4, and again, we have a very nice advantage. He plays here. Now he has time to play bishop b7, but he is left with a permanent weakness on c7. Yes, this is another very nice advantage for white. We put the pieces in the center like this. I don't know, maybe here, later, and here. Of course, we will never allow this c5 move. And this is just about enough. And in fact, here I'm blundering pieces. There is knight g5. So anyway, what we are mostly interested in is, at this moment, the strategy behind the moves. So b5 was played, and b3. Yes, we have seen such type of positions. I have absolutely no doubt that both white and black here were on their own. So rook c1, they were out of book. Rook c1 with good compensation. Here c6. I suppose after bishop b7, a move like knight e5, intending to put the knight here, very typical idea. Knight e5, and the knight is coming to d3. Black played c6, so knight e5 again. Here, and white played queen c2. Very nice compensation, knight d3. Somebody may say, but I'm not sure with the white pieces how well I can handle this position. The answer is yes, but if you get the black pieces, all of a sudden you will say again that you hate this position. Well, there is a question here, an interesting question. In this setup, we should avoid exchanging one pair of knights. It has to do mostly with concrete tactical or positional calculation. There are no rules like that. Generally speaking, we have more space. We should not exchange pieces, but this is just general talking. Yes, we need to calculate specifically. So here, black has what we say as a solid but very passive position, and I would definitely not like to have the black pieces here in this game. Yes, queen e3, some moves. I don't know if they are the most accurate move. Besides, this is of course not theory, but you see the typical ideas remain. Here with nice compensation, in the end, white managed to win a very nice game. Now, let's now study another continuation. Let's check this game. With the white pieces, it's Zhu Wenyun, and with the black pieces, another Chinese player, Zhu Guzhue or something. So let's check. White has a rating of 25.57, of course. She is a super grandmaster, and if if I make no mistake with the Chinese name, because there are also a male player with a similar name. Anyway, a6 we castle. So far we studied knight c6 here, queen a4, a6 castle and knight c6, bishop g5. And here we're going to study a6, b5. Of course, white goes knight e5 and c6. Yes, this is theory. Look, this is considered to be a very, very nice move. If we take knight takes c6, which is playable, but black will play this move. This is already very well known. And here we can hardly achieve anything. But look at this forced continuation. We play b3. He needs to take this pawn on b3. Yes, black cannot play such moves, because if we imagine this position with equal material, this is catastrophe for black. Yes, he's going to lose soon. So c takes b3 is not good or bad. It is forced if he wants to play a serious game. So c takes b3, and now knight takes c6. Why? Because my computer says so. Queen b6, knight here, all this sweet sequence of moves. And if you remember that, white has some very nice advantage here. By the way, if bishop b7, we take advantage of the location of this rook on a7, and we play this move, intending bishop e3. Okay, if you memorize all this, you are very seriously fighting for the advantage. So here white has some small advantage, the position is playable, and in the end, white won. Let's check another game in this line. Of course, in the database, you can find a lot more games. So this game between Kaufman and Balog, the player with the black pieces, is a very, very good grandmaster, and yet he lost this game. Knight f3, d5, different move orders. We are in the a6, b5 variation. By the way, we just castle. I wonder what we should play against this move. This move is not in the notes, and it's not going to be in the notes. Let's think. I'm sure there is a reason for that. Why isn't this move in the notes? What do you think? First of all, not every legal move can be included, but this is not the reason. The reason is totally different. Of course, white will play here, and he will easily regain the pawn. And let's see what will happen then. He castles. Let's say knight c3, because now I can safely win the pawn back. c5, who will tell us what to play with white? There is absolutely no doubt here. dc5, of course. Let's suppose he takes. We take. Bishop takes c5. Knight takes c4. And we are once again in the d c5, cd4 type of position. We will consider moves like bishop here, oh, not here, sorry, on g5 I meant, overwrite that, or on f4, and maybe even consider this, of course, which is also an advantage for white, especially after bishop f4. If here it was white to move, for example, after such a move, which probably will not be played here, and forcing the exchange of the bishops is with a permanent advantage for white. So there is a nice question. What about after a6, this knight e5 move? This is a playable move, knight e5, but I decided to suggest another line. Yes, this is totally playable. Black plays c5, and this is a playable line. So here, of course, we do not get an advantage by force in this line. Yes, it is playable. So b5 and knight e5, c6, again b3. You need to remember that. C takes b3, and now knight takes c6. This is the move that I know, just like we saw in the previous game. However, white played queen takes b3. I am not sure whether he knew theory here or he was just playing logical moves. Black played bishop b7, and there is compensation here. This is another line. This is still theory. And he played here. I'm really not sure what which are the best moves here. And if you open your computer, if you turn it on, it may even show something like -012 or something, -020. This means absolutely, but absolutely nothing during the game, unless you are a computer or a super top grandmaster. So here, what remains is typical compensation. A4, yes, not necessary, several ideas also for white, exchanging the dark square bishops, yes, I like it, and black is offering the pawn back. Why? Why can't we take the pawn? Because of queen b6, I see, because of queen b6. So here, yes, let's suppose black plays a move like this. I suppose we take on e7 or play knight d3 directly. Yes, because we have already come across this idea, knight d3, and very nice. I'm trying, to show you how a normal play, how a normal game will be played between two good players. Yes, so who are not computers. Here with typical compensation. Yes. However, after b3, b takes c3, knight takes c3, as in the previous game, seems to be the best move. Okay. Let us now, of course, for white and for black, there are other ways to play as well. Now, let's go to another very serious variation. So we are here, take bishop g2 and the move c5. This is an interesting move. Black wants to attack very fast in the center with knight c6. The black's objective intention is to make a draw. And we may say he comes comparatively near to that. He is slightly worse in the variation, at least slightly worse in the variation that I chose. It's slightly better for white, maybe even much better if black doesn't know what to do. So here we castle and black plays knight c6. We can imagine a move like this. So during the game, what would I do? Of course, I would think as if I see this position for the first time in my life. Who will tell us what should white play here in his opinion? Black thought for a while and he produced this move. Very good. D takes c5, exchange queens, and win the pawn back. And this is, of course, not an equal game. This is a huge advantage for white. For example, he castles, knight c6, knight c3, and he plays here. Look at this strange move. Here is the principle that I was talking to you about. Who would like to guess the move or calculate the move by white and remember the principle that I have mentioned? Who would like to do that? Of course, the most important thing is to calculate, but here I don't believe somebody can calculate everything until the end. So what to do here? Knight takes c6, knight takes c4, bishop takes c6. Which move to choose? What do you think? I would like to tell you, in my view, the worst move, no matter what the computer says, if you can calculate a million moves, things are different. The worst move would be this, and I'm glad that nobody suggested this move. Here, we won a pawn, but black has done, no, we won the pawn back, I mean. We are not even an extra pawn up, but black has dynamic counterplay. And all the more, what is the problem here? This is not a classical advantage. Yes, this is not a classical. So remember the principle. If I have to choose between a classical, well-known type of position advantage and an advantage that is based on calculation, I take on c6, then I take again, then what do I always do? I rely on the classical advantage. I let Botvinnik and Smyslov play the next few moves. So knight takes c4 is the correct move, in fact, at least in a practical sense. Bishop takes c6 is also interesting, but this is the most classical move, nice and easy, and we are better. Yes, this is how you should think in the catalog. So c5, castles, and this is an amazing move between Caruana and an amazing game between Caruana and Bacrot. So knight c6 is the theory. And now I remember when I was much younger, this move was popular, some games by Kasparov and all this. I used to play this move, which was analyzed, I remember, up to a pawn endgame these days. And in the past, some other moves, this is also very popular, but you cannot suggest them all, yes? But dc5, this is another very popular move. If you want, you can investigate the move queen a4 also by yourself. So queen takes d1, rook takes d1, bishop takes c5, and knight bd2. You can possibly guess black's move here. Black should not go down without a fight. If he just castles short, then we take on c4, and once again, if he castles, this is a very bad move positionally. We take on c4, and once again, we are in a position of which we already know. For example, after here, the computer may tell you a move like e4. Personally, I hesitate to play this move. I prefer to play here in such position. Not at all obligatory, but here, and then rook a to c1, because I like to simply develop my pieces. I very much like this type of play with simple development. Here, natural development. If necessary, I will play e3 and rook a c1 with typical play, which I believe we all understand by now. What have I said about this position that is important? It is a very pleasant position for white, but we need to think a lot, because this is a nice and an enjoyable task to think a lot in such a position, but we need to calculate, think a lot, because if we don't do that and we don't play precise moves, our opponent will escape. He will just develop the pieces. It's an insult for me to allow my opponent to just develop his queen side without gaining anything. At least a better rook endgame, for example. Okay. So take, bishop takes c5, knight bd2, c3 is the move, b takes c3, castles, knight b3, all these moves go by force pretty much. And now there are two continuations for white. c4 is one move, intending bishop b2 and c5, many games in this line. And white has a small advantage, but permanent. You will check two very good games. And there is also this line, knight f to d4, which I also like, knight f to d4. And the best move in my view for black is to, strangely enough, to take on d4. And now all moves are possible. C takes d4, but this is not the only move. But this has been played. Look, I would like to draw your attention. I would like to attract your attention here in this position. We take on c6. Of course, he will take with his bishop. We exchange on c6. Otherwise, he's threatening to play here. We will be worse in the end. So we take, and look at this position. We play c4. It's very important to stop such counter plays like this. c4. So, for example, a move like rook fd8. Many games, not many, like let's say 30 games have been played from this position, and this is a very pleasant endgame for white. White can play moves like bishop here, bishop d2. All these moves are good. Here is what I like the most. I very much like, yes, all these moves are good and very nice advantage for white, not at all equal. Yes, black is going to suffer for a long time. This is the move I like very much. And if you can believe, my intention is to just take on f6. For a second there, this appears to be shocking, because he will take and he gains tempo and all this. But then after a few seconds, we recover and we understand that this dark square bishop of black is completely impotent, and we may put our knight here on d3, even if we are left with just with an endgame of just knight against, just knight against bishop. Here we can even play this move here or here, then bring the king in the center, and we have a long-lasting initiative. Even this position that theoretically it is a draw, yes, I know. Here theoretically it's a draw, but practically there is still a black is a long way away from draw. We will start gaining space on the king side like this, e4, f4, and keep on playing and playing and playing. for many, many hours, and we will enjoy the game while black is suffering. If he does everything perfect, yes, it will be a draw. So knight f to d4. I believe the best move for black is to take on d4. c4 was played in this game by two super grandmasters, Caruana and Bacro. Let's check this game briefly. Bishop b2, rook a to c8. They play rook f to d8. So c5, c5. There is one line, bishop takes f6, but it's not really good. And then take on d7. And here we have two pieces for a rook. In terms of material, we're standing very well, but black will invade with his rook and we have problems. So this is not working. So c5, and white has long-lasting pressure, like here, and you will follow the game. Bishop takes c6. This is a, remember this plan. I need you to remember this plan here. White plays with a pawn on c5 and a knight, a bishop, and a rook. And if you check later, the next game that I will show you very fast is in this position to take on f6. Let's say in a similar pawn structure, but without a dark square bishop. This is the game by Ioannis Giri, as we will see. So in both cases, white has a risk-free game. This is very interesting. And what Caruana played is very interesting, very skillful play by black, by white. You need to memorize the plan, how he's moving the pieces, how he removes all the pressure. What he wants to do, he wants to play this move to remove the pressure out of c5, but he cannot do it because he's losing the knight. So he wants to bring the king here and then play a4. And let's check the game. e5, for example, here. Yes. So king is coming. We are learning plans here. Yes, plans. They move back and forth. We cannot play like Caruana, but we are learning plans. And here white wants to put his king on c4 and free his rook. Little by little, he's making big progress. So king to c4, and now he's ready to move his rook and start chasing black pawns. An idea that one may consider is even this under the right circumstances, possibly not yet. So here white is much better. He may consider this idea, for example, here, and rook b6. This appears to be very strong. And black may lose. So he decided somewhere here to sacrifice a piece, and he lost in the end. Let's check another game, Giri Wojtaszek, as promised. So g3. A huge expert in the Catalan is Ioannis Giri with the white pieces. I suggest that you study, regardless of the variation that he chooses, all his games in the Catalan. How can I locate, I'm talking now about non-professional players. How can I find all of Giri's games in the Catalan? Well, Giri has, the Catalan has a code of from E00 to E09. So you should ask your computer to find you games where Ioannis Giri has the white pieces, and the ECO code, Encyclopedia of Chess opening code, is from E00 to E09. Yes, these are the codes of the Catalan. So for example, this DC4 variation on the fourth move is E04. So by different move order, they reached this position by different move order, and white took on c5, and we reached again this endgame c3. He takes it. Knight b3. Another playable move is knight d1, intending knight d3, as played by Boris Gelfand and other grandmasters. Of course, you should study the games of Boris Gelfand, in the Catalan, of Vladimir Kramnik, of myself also. I also have some very good games, and of Alexander Belyavsky and many others. So c4 again, and bishop b2, and knight f to d4 this time by Ioannis Giri. Rook b8. Usually they play this, in the theory, and white goes knight b5, intending some ideas like this, intending, of course, if necessary, to take here and sometimes and win a pawn on a7, not so easy. So let's see what happened here. Wojtaszek played rook a to b8, and white took on c6, he took on d8, of course he took on c6, and we reach this endgame again, like Caruana played with Bacro. So a playable continuation can be this, for example, intending c5, maybe even c5 immediately, but he took on f6. This is also the move generally that I like very much, because the bishop on f6 is very impotent. Black possesses the only open file, not the main open file, but he doesn't have squares to enter. So white will slowly improve his position like this, as he did. And yes, the game with perfect play is a draw, but you need to study this game very deeply and study the nuances of the position, and then you are going to turn yourself into a tremendous Catalan player. You can also find many, many more games in the database. Okay. It doesn't have to be every time a player with 2,700. Yes, players with 2,000 rating, with 1,800 rating, their games are also very useful if you are a good amateur player. So here we are. Now let's study another variation. Just a second. Let's study. Here we are. Let's study. Yes. The line with bishop d7. Just a second. So bishop d7. Now, this line is very popular for some reason over the last years. Why? Because white had not discovered the best ways to play. Now, after bishop d7, the idea very obviously is bishop c6. And the main line used to be, and I'm afraid it still is, but it's clearly not the best move, it's this one, obviously. But after bishop c6, take and take, it appears that bishop takes c6 and white is better, but things are very different. White is still a pawn down. He has zero development, and black may even get an advantage here if white is not careful. So they used to play knight e5, and they still play, and take, and some ideas like this. But then black is allowed to castle long, and then he starts like moves like this, and h5, h4, and take here. There is no checkmate. If you can imagine this position, take on g3, f5, g5, queen h7, queen h2, check. White will always play rook e1 and king f1. However, I am very much against such a variation that is totally not in the spirit of the Catalan. I don't want to base my Catalan knowledge on the fact that I have king f1 and I'm not checkmated. Yes, we want to play the Catalan very differently. We want to play for risk-free advantages. So after bishop d7, we should not play knight e5. There are two good moves for white here. The one move is knight bd2, which I have played 2 or 3 times and won very convincingly all the times. This knight bd2. And here you will check there is some theory, for example, b5, which is of course risky. Bishop b5 is playable. It's not that we are winning or anything. Here, sometimes we are forced to sacrifice a pawn, but with a lot of compensation like this, and knight c4, or take and rook b1 with a lot of compensation, because even this is coming here. So it's very risky for him to keep the pawn. Usually, black plays like this: bishop c6. We take on c4 and moves like this: castle and castle. So first this move. Now I have played both knight c to e5 and knight e3. This appears to be more natural. So here white has a small advantage, but very nice advantage. First of all, black has not played c5 yet. Possibly he will do it at some moment, but he has not played c5 yet. If he manages to play c5, if we allow him to play c5, then our strategy will be possibly the idea with knight d3. However, we should not be obsessed with this idea. Yes, our plan in the Catalan is not to follow one or the other particular strategy. Our plan is to develop our pieces in good active squares and play a very nice game. So here I would have played this move with white. Also, this is playable. This move, because we are, how can I say, we are very close to this strategy to take on f6, exchange bishops, and put a knight on d3. So I would like to play this move, bishop g5. For example, here, yes, knight d3 is these are exactly the moves that we should generally avoid when we can develop our pieces. Yes, it is interesting, but this knight d3 is a suggestion by a player, and then knight bd7. No, we don't play chess like that. We just develop our pieces. Bishop g5. Next move, for example, he goes here. I happily take it. He takes it. Now that we have developed our pieces, we may consider a move like knight d3 or even e3. Now, here it's a moment to calculate. So this is a very interesting possibility. Rook c1. We need to calculate, of course, bishop takes a2. Don't forget that. And b3, it seems that the bishop is trapped, as it seems. So rook c1 is an interesting idea, or a move like queen c2. Again, it needs to be calculated. We are already threatening e4. For example, he takes, I would like to take even with a bishop, or let's say knight takes c6, rook f to d1, and a nice small advantage, very typical of the Catalan. I have played positions like that so many times in my life, in Blitz games, in standard games, a small advantage, and we keep on playing. That's what we can do. Bishop here. For example, he goes knight bd7, and in fact, I have played a game like this, I believe, and I played this move. We have ideas with e4. For example, I calculated. He takes, I take with a pawn. You see, the Catalan is no exception. The most important thing in chess is calculation. And I calculated this, and here I calculated this move. And if knight takes e5, we play f4, if I remember correctly. And white is better, if I remember correctly. So here, maybe other playable moves are this, queen d3 or something, maybe rook c1. Of course, we should not expect like a winning position for a white. Yes, just a small advantage. Maybe even this is possible. Take. This begins to be very equal. Let's say queen c2, c5. Now I'm just thinking loudly. e4, bishop here, and now this move possibly intending d5, maybe even this move intending d5. So here he takes, I take with the knight, possibly here, rook a to c1, and the game goes on. And here we have a very unusual Catalan, but still I believe white is doing very well. Yes. So of course we cannot predict all the possible moves and ideas. So knight bd2 is a great move. He played b5, and I see two moves here, either knight e5 or a4. Which one is in the theory? I don't really remember, but it seems to me, you will check it yourself, it seems to me that both are playable. This is also playable because if he plays bishop c6, I will take on b5. So knight e5, c6, and once again, typical Catalan compensation. I would say a very good version for white because this bishop is misplaced on d7. So a4, threatening to take on b5. Let's check here. Castles and bishop d6. How about f6? Again, we calculate. Possibly we will take on d7 this time, and maybe play a move like e4. This appears to be very strong. And if here, first of all, I see we can win the pawn back. Look, take, and check. And then I take on b5. And of course, another idea to consider is to open up the center with d5. This also appears to be very interesting. What is the theory here? Of course, we are out of book, yes? So here, castle. In the game, this move was played, and who will suggest a move for white here in this position that is out of book? In my mind, there is no doubt that the correct move is knight e4, of course, the most natural move. And indeed, this move was played, knight e4. Black took here. Let's consider this move. Let's suppose he plays here. I don't see a bright future for black. We may even consider the move b3, but I see other possibilities as well. For example, I see this possibility, knight c3, because we are threatening now a takes b5. If it was white to move here, a takes b5. I don't even believe this game will last too long. I believe black is maybe even losing by force here. Look, we are threatening to take on b5, a takes b5, c takes b5, and knight takes d5, and I cannot even find an answer. For example, if he takes, we take here, and this is just lost. We are threatening to take. f6, we take on d7, and we take on b5. And once we equalize the pawn, the material here, it's game over because black is full of weaknesses. He will end up 2 or 3 pawns down. So it's not all about knowing everything, of course. I try another move. Here, yes, I can take on b5, of course, yes. Let's suppose I don't take on b5 and I castle. And he plays a move like, I don't know, like c3. Again, I would like to play this move with very nice compensation. Look, take, castle, and I will be very happy to execute. Yes, a takes b5 here. Let's just suppose this is not working. I will be very happy to play such a move. What I want to show you is that I want you to feel very calm and confident. You just need some memorization, and then we cannot predict everything, and we don't want to predict everything, every possible reaction by black. We just know typical ideas. We believe in our position. We have belief in the Catalan. It is a super wonderful opening and very difficult for black to face it. So this was one line after b5. Of course, needless to say, who will comment on this move? Our opponent all of a sudden decides to play this move. What do you say? This move is, of course, horrible. I am about to cry with white here. I mean, yes, I don't want my opponent to play so bad. I mean, I prefer that he plays better than that. Here, this is a huge advantage for white, strategically winning position all of a sudden. I would consider the move b3 here and bishop b2, and black is left without pawn breaks and without counterplay. Very good. So you see, if you understand, if you have a good idea of typical positions, immediately you recognize such a position. Immediately, yes? Now, that's the magical thing about the Catalan. It's not about memorization. Let's check another game between two super players. It's a blitz game, Cheparinov, Erigaisi. So here, black forgot the theory and he lost quickly. After bishop here, knight bd2 is good, but also this move is good. Castles, bishop c6, and queen c2. And now there is some theory, this move, but this is for concrete reasons, here and e4, this is very bad. Somebody may claim, but you just told us that we should not allow such moves. Yes, in fact, I was talking about bishop b7. This bishop is misplaced here, and not surprisingly, a very fast e4 and d5 comes. Here, white has a big advantage, as we will see, but let's consider, in this position, this move. Bishop e7. So we will take the pawn, castles, and knight c3. It does remind me knowledge that we have already acquired. After knight bd7, we may consider this move, although we are not yet threatening e4. He has knight c5, and we may consider bishop f4 is also playable, and this lazy type of play, this fits with my style. I wouldn't call it lazy, but very positional. I just developed the piece there, and on the next moves, I put my two rooks on the D and C line and exert pressure. So white is easily slightly better. I believe this is a more ambitious move, queen d3. However, we need to be prepared also for more counterplay. Let's check what happened here. We are talking about this line. Castle is another good move, and knight bd2 is another. So here, bishop here, queen c2, this is bad. Knight is coming here, knight bd7, and e4, white has a huge advantage because this is coming very fast. So before and d5, of course, is the principal move, as we say. d5 is the principal move. What is the definition of principal move in chess? I have given it in the past. It means ignoring my opponent's threats. I see my opponent's threats, I locate my opponent's threat, and I calculate and choose to ignore them. So d5, he's threatening my knight, yes, but I ignore his threat. d5 is the principal move. Black is lagging, of course, in development, and tremendous initiative. One cannot honestly hope that with the black pieces here, he will develop his pieces, just losing a little bit of material, castle, and continue playing the game. Yes, he is about to lose a lot of material. Very good. Of course, this was by young super grandmaster Eric Gaisi. This was just a bleach game where he was not careful. And here is one of my efforts against another Greek grandmaster. So here I chose knight bd2, bishop c6, I took it. Here knight e5, check. Here queen takes d2 with a nice small advantage for white because black is not yet able to play c5. So here I played this. Indirectly, I stop c5. There is a calculation behind these moves. Up to which move did I know? Up to this move. Queen takes d2, castles and castles. Up to here did I know? Yes, I didn't know more because we don't really need more. It would be a waste of time. So rook f to d1, here is calculation. I know this position was something like plus 0.30 or something, plus 0.35, and we keep on playing. So some calculation here. I played some nice moves and entered a nice endgame. And in such a position, white should keep the knights. It was by force my move. Here, we should keep the knights on the board. And this is a small advantage, just like I like to play it. Not just me, but many other grandmasters. By the way, here, and what happens after rook d7? Let's comment on the move knight takes c6 or knight takes b7. Is it a good move? The answer is yes, very good move, because in the not necessary, I mean, white is better even if he consolidates like this, but taking on c6 or on b7 is very good, because in the end game we have already mentioned rook and pawns tend to be better than a pair of bishops. So we take there, we take on c6 and rook a to c1 with a big advantage for white. Of course, here, if we even exchange one pair of rooks, this is completely winning for white. Black is only hoping in these positions, he's hoping for coordination of pieces. But in order for black to achieve combined attacks with his pieces, combined counterplay, first of all, he needs to have pieces. So he should keep the rook on the board. So this is how we played. Just a second, sorry. This is how we played. We are always happy to reach such a position. I strengthen my position little by little. The computer suggests a move here, this move. For humans, this is a very premature move. Very premature, but the computer is only based on concrete calculation and zero strategy. So I played this, and then e3. You need to play e3, start gaining space with g4, h4, and such stuff, and try to put pressure. In the end, I won a nice rook endgame. So now let's check another line. Don't worry, for the moment, it is impossible for you to remember. You just have some vague ideas here and there. I told you how to study these lines. If you are not in the mood to simply memorize everything, and remember which are the possible variations, and the first move after each line, and then the rest may come to you little by little. So now we will talk about another move order, in fact, not this check, but by transposition, let's say we are here, dc4, bishop d2, and this line, check, bishop d2, and a5 by transposition. So here, check, bishop d2, a5, I played here, and this is a transposition here. And now queen c2 is the move in the match, as we mentioned, between Anand and Topalov, and a3 is another playable move. Here is the line with compensation. We have already mentioned that. Take, knight takes, b5, b3. We saw a few games with this line. Castle, castle, queen b2, and then rook f to c1. Such ideas, knight b3. The knight may come here or through e1 to d3. This other knight on b3 with nice compensation. So in this game, after a3, black played bishop d6. In fact, this already took me out of book, if you can believe, and I'm considered a tremendous Catalan expert. But why am I considered a Catalan expert? Because I know the plans and the ideas. The possible variation and transpositions are literally thousands. So bishop d6, what should white play here? White should simply win the pawn back. So here, queen takes c4, castles. Indeed, I didn't find the best move here. The computer suggests that this very difficult move, and then knight c3, is the best move. Why? Because this is some kind of Slav defense. In fact, black will be able to play. Look, black will be able theoretically to free his bishop from c8. However, again, we have active pieces, and with this a5 move that black played, his pawn majority on the queen side, this is the wrong way to push the majority. When you play a5, you can never play c5 anymore. The situation has to change tremendously in order to be able to play c5. Yes, so black would rather have the pawn here, in fact, on a7 or on a6, and then at some moment he may play c5 with a pawn on a5. So this a3, a5 pair of moves is clearly in white's favor. However, here I played simple moves, b6, knight c3. Here, yes, the move queen c6 was very interesting, but since I saw my opponent was bleaching out the moves, I was a bit reluctant. So I played this move. He played c5. I played rook f to d1. This is the correct move, removing the rook from this diagonal. He played here. Yes, here the computer finds a way to punish my play. The computer says a4, a move which I did not spot, and the game is equal. But black played rook a to c8. And here it is white to move. Here it's not about, of course, knowing theory. Theory is over. Here it's about playing good moves. So a move like rook a to c1 seemed to me very slow and very not deep at all, without any clear idea. So white has a much better idea to start exerting pressure. And who will find the move, please? This rook ac1 is very impulsive. That's the word I was looking for. A very impulsive move, rook a to c1. So except from rook a to c1, there is only one very good move, here, and very typical, we came across this move several times already. The move is, of course, bishop g5. This is the move. Now we want to combine trends to take here. If he takes with the knight, I can take on c5. So according to the computer, however, this very unusual move is very strong, bishop e3, and this gives me an even bigger advantage. If knight g4, then I go bishop g5. I failed to see bishop e3 because I saw bishop here, and that was good enough. Then at some moment we want to take on f6, and I played a good game here. For example, if c4, I go back, maybe even here, but to c2, and now I want to advance e4. And another idea is to play a4 and stop his pawn majority. So in the end, I won a nice, very nice endgame, I believe. Let's check a couple of more moves. Queen e7, that was a bad move. And here I calculated a strong move, d5. Very strong idea. After this d5, white is much, much better, practically almost winning, because the key idea is that after e5, I have this knight h4, practically forcing g6. And now I have very good play with my pieces. My bishop will go to h3, and my knight from c3, of course, is ready to come. I'm already threatening to win a piece. And this knight will come here, and there is a lot of pressure. So in order for black to avoid this pressure, he played such moves, and there were some combinations and positional combinations, some weaknesses on the light squares, and I knew that things are going well for me because I could see that I am punishing this a3, a5 pair of moves. I'm using it to my advantage, and in the end, I managed to win. So you can see the rest of the game because it's a very educative end game. Now I will show you another game very fast. Just a second. Another game is this one. So here again in the same line, we are talking about this line with check. So bishop d2. If he goes back, queen a4 check, I will be happy to regain the pawn here, and a3 takes. b5 is practically only move, and we reach this position with nice compensation here. Queen b2, queen e7 was played by black. You may claim that this queen e7 is not the best move, maybe. Yes, but black has a rating of 2373. Who has a higher rating than that and can play better? So knight e5, a4. If here, of course, white will regain the pawn. We won't play like this. At some moment, we need to do something, yes? So white will regain the pawn, and the way I see it, possibly here, just possibly, we can even take. We are threatening a4. We need to consider this move, of course, and then calculate this, and then move the queen away and be a pawn up, and then we. Let's see what happened here. Knight f3, and finally knight d3. White is maneuvering with his knight. He wants to block the position, and knight e1 again. The other knight is going to c5. Knight d3. Here you see, who would like to have such a position with black? Nobody. e3 stabilizing. Remember this idea, e3. Most of the times when we play e3, our plan is to play e4 at a good moment. So here black retreated. Knight b4 with a big advantage. Black didn't know what to do. He had absolutely no plan. He started moving back and forth, and in the end they reached this totally lost position, and indeed white managed to win. Very good. Now there are one or two lines which do not deserve too much explanation. For example, let me randomly open a board. So here there is also this extremely rare line, bishop e7, but this move this time is very good. Queen a4 check with typical counterplay. For example, typical advantage. For example, if bishop d7, we take it, and bishop c6. Now, I would like with white to play knight c3, because black's idea is to play bishop d5 and find time to throw in c5. So I'm telling him with my moves, if you want to play c5, you need to part with your bishop. You need to exchange your light square bishop. If you keep it on c6, then I'm afraid there is no c5. For example, if he goes here, no, my intention is not to take it immediately. I will play here, intending e4. And now we are telling to our opponent with our moves that if you play c5 and permanently weaken this diagonal, then I will capture the bishop on d5 and open up the position. You see, he plays here because making a pawn break is important. If he plays here, then this is just very bad. He's threatening this, yes, but I go rook d1. He can hardly breathe, or I go queen c2. So we are here. He plays c5 after all. I immediately capture this bishop. He takes, I take on c5, he takes, and now many moves to consider. For example, the way I see it, I like this move here, and here everything with tempo. I may even consider this move. Look, I moved my knight so many times. Here we have a very nice risk-free advantage, for example. Of course, there are several other ways for white to play. So here, bishop e7 is not very good move. Queen a4 check. This is a playable, very rare but playable alternative. This knight bd7. We castle. This is also good. And maybe even this is good. So we castle. This is not good. Black will be left behind in development. And they play such a move. And now, this is interesting. Black may play b5, but then he has tactical problems. And what about this move? Who will tell us very fast what white should play here? Very, very good. I see we have very good calculators. White will take. Let's say he castles. I will be very happy to play this move. Please be careful. Light square bishops. So he goes here. I will gladly. Possible moves on. We will stop for now, and of course, I will see you. I hope I will see you in about half an hour.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ioannis. So we resume our lectures in half an hour.